Hello everybody, thanks for dropping by. I'd like to talk to you today about the player numbers on the new games that are coming out. Now that E3 is out the way, we all have a chance to review some of the major news events that were released. The predominant one was the dedicated servers from Microsoft for the new Xbox One. Looking at Kotaku's Australian website, it seems that the dedicated servers are preliminarily aimed at the cloud service which Microsoft is having for its new Xbox. And the Examiner.com news site dated May 21st this year said Xbox One multiplayer games all have dedicated servers up to 128 players. Now the PC has had that number of players ever since at least 2005, and Arma 2, which I played, could handle 128 players. There's a modern company called Project Reality which works with Arma 2 and the Arma brand per se, and I've seen YouTube clips of that with 256 players. Now that's alright for Arma because the landscapes, they're not maps, the landscapes are just so big they can handle that many players plus the same number of AI characters, i.e. the bots. Battlefield, DICE has said that there's going to be 64 players. Well, we've had that since Battlefield 2, which is the only Battlefield game I've played, and the Battlefield 2 maps are a little bit bigger than the Battlefield 3 maps. If you're going to have large maps, and DICE has said that they're going to have maps from Battlefield 3 that have been redone, you need people to play them to fill them up. And 64 or 32 versus 32 really wouldn't do it. With that new desert one, that was the biggest one ever, and I've seen reports on the forums that the place has felt like a ghost town. I can understand how they feel because the last DICE game I ever played was Bad Company 2. That was only 16 versus 16, and many a time I felt that the maps could do with more people, especially the map called Heavy Metal. But as it is in those days, they had to restrict it to the size of the console ability, which was at the most 32 people, or 16 versus 16. Now Xbox One has come along and they say it's going to be up to 128 people. So DICE naturally is under pressure to increase the player count up to 128. DICE has apparently said that, i.e. Patrick Back, the head guy at DICE, that they tried it 128 and it's not fun. Well, that's just their opinion. We're the gamers, we're the people who play the game, they're just the developers. A happy medium could be 96 players, or 48 versus 48. The DICE maps I've seen for Battlefield 4, just the one, it doesn't look that big. It's probably big when you're actually inside the map, but it feels like a section of Call of Duty map. Bring that back up. I hope that DICE takes into account what people have been saying about player counts, because with the new console actually playing up to 128 players, or 64 per side, DICE should at least consider that for the personal computer version, because anything that the consoles can handle, the personal computer can more than surpass in its capacity. The Bad Company 2 maps even with 32 people, were a reasonable size, even though they were as linear as a pencil. I didn't play the Conquest match so much because I've noticed that the Conquest match is on Bad Company 2 all tend to have a smaller map size, and I predominantly played Rush, which you move through the entire map, but with the linear nature of the Bad Company 2 maps, there were several bottlenecks which just ruined the whole map because you crammed all the players into a funnel. The Battlefield 4 maps, I hope, are more spaced out like the Battlefield 2 maps used to be with Conquest, which was all I used to play on 64 player teams, i.e. 32 versus 32. I like the detail of the Battlefield 4 maps, the little that we've seen, as they don't seem to be as bland as what Bad Company 2 was. I didn't bother with Battlefield 3 as DICE lied to the PC community, and I don't want to give them my money for doing that. But I'm seriously considering getting Battlefield 4, so hopefully we'll have some news and it's not just restricted to 64 matches, 64 player matches that is. But even if it is, it's a lot better than the little teams that predominantly on Call of Duty. The Titanfall at E3, that was a 7-on-7 game. That's 14 players, which, as I said before, are little console teams for little console maps. I prefer the big maps with big teams. It gives you a more immersive feel of being in a real battle and not just a small firefight. So here's hoping that Battlefield 4 reaches a happy medium of 96 players if they don't want to stretch to 128, and that'll do me until Battlefield 5 comes along, which probably will convince DICE to up the player count with accompanying size maps to accompany that many people, and more open space and not as linear as Bad Company 2. But then we might have Bad Company 3 next year instead of Battlefield 5, so they might use that as a test bed for larger players, as Harvest Day and Oasis was my two favourite Battlefield Bad Company 2 maps. Anyway, that's just my take on this map and player size debate which is going on in the forums, and I'll be watching it with interest to see what happens on the run up to the October release of Battlefield 4. Anyway, as always, like, dislike, subscribe, unsubscribe, comment, not comment, whatever it is you want to do, it's all up to you. So until next time, bye.